With us now for a deeper analysis on the latest round of U.S.-China agreements is Jonathan Adams with the World Resources Institute here in Washington. He is project manager for the China Facts Network. Jonathan, great to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for coaching me on all the names of those Chinese groups we were just talking about.
Not a problem, it's tough.
A tongue twister.
Yep.
Shale gas is the one area of agreement. This is something new coming out just over the last few days of discussions. Natural gas is not a commodity we usually hear talked about in China.
That's correct. China does not have great supplies of natural gas. The natural gas that they do use in larger quantities, they actually bring in from the Kazakhstan, Turkestan area, and also there's been some high-profile deals that have been under discussion with Russia. But for the most part, this gas, as I understand it, is pipelined into major markets, and it's very expensive comparatively to other energy sources in China.
If that is easily tapped in China, if the unconventional plays are plentiful, do you see the Chinese making a turn away from coal-fired power plants, which are so infamous in climate talks here on Capitol Hill?
You know, not being an expert in natural gas or natural gas markets, there's a couple things that I would say as I understand shale gas and also the Chinese perspective on these issues. One, I think they're looking to experiment in areas that would be lower carbon and lower carbon energy sources, and if this proves to be one, that may be something that they would push forward and develop more. One of the other key constraints, though, as I understand shale gas, is some of the water resources and the water-intensive processes that go into it. And as you probably know from some of your other interviewers and folks here, water is a big problem in China. And so I think that will be one of the key constraints about whether or not this is a technology that they're able to wildly sort of adopt and deploy in China.
Let's talk about, Jonathan, the agreements that are not necessarily new. That is issues of efficiency, coal-related technology. Is this in some ways just building on the MOUs that Stephen Chu and Gary Locke got into place with the Chinese earlier this summer?
I think absolutely. I mean, most of the people in this administration had spent some time outside of government working on projects and thinking through how you would move forward on U.S.-China collaboration in key areas. And the MOUs and the 10-year framework actually signed under the Bush administration were all pieces on which to hang further agreements. So I do think that while it's been a lot of work for the administration folks to lay down what the specifics of these deals would look like, we knew what a lot of the major categories and major areas for scaling up cooperation would be.
One of the critiques of this trip is that the two presidents really dodged some of the more sensitive areas, but they did talk about climate change issues. And President Hu was very straightforward, stressing the importance of Copenhagen on one hand. On the other, he says China will take climate action only within its capabilities. Is that an especially qualified answer or promise in your mind?
I don't think that any country is being asked to take actions beyond their capabilities. I think that's been the fact that we want to expect the Chinese to move beyond what would be possible for a country that is still trying to develop and urbanize 400-some million people, that is still producing at a per capita base emissions 4 or 5 times less than we are here in the States, that still has hundreds of millions of people who still live below what we would consider basic needs, $1, $2 a day. I think it's really hard to look at Beijing and Shanghai and expect, oh, well, they can just transition very quickly. So what I do see is a strong commitment in China to take on increasing their energy security in a low carbon way, to try to develop industries that will support this low carbon transition, and to look for partnerships with major countries like the States, not only because of the technology needs, but also to prove that we're serious and to prove that we're committed to doing these things.
Jonathan, I saw you nodding along as we were talking about the emissions report, the global emissions report, and the growth year after year projected for China. Any way to control that that you see, other than the efforts already underway by the Chinese in terms of a global agreement to control that growth?
I think the important thing is to do exactly what they're doing, is to develop an agenda, a strategic framework to try and build out collaboration and partnerships internationally and also domestically. They're investing tremendously in these industries, in renewable industries and energy efficiency. I think one of the other key areas is that they see that this is where their potential competitiveness of the 21st century and the global economy is going to be. And I think that's what's going to make the difference. It's not going to be how do we cap, it's going to be how do we transition And I think that's what they're trying to figure out. The other piece of it that I would think is really important is that if you look at a range of policies that were announced in 2006 on the 11th five-year plan going forward, you see that they've experimented with some policies, whether in the energy efficiency space, in renewable energy, and what kinds of market mechanisms, what kind of central government administrated policies and measures would actually produce growth. And what you'll see in the next period, when they adopt another five-year plan, the 12th five-year plan, that many of the things that have worked throughout this period will be picked up. You'll see increasing investments, and hopefully you'll see commitment to moving forward on stronger targets and more ambitious goals.
Jonathan, final question. Before you joined WRI, you were with the Asia Society Center for U.S.-China Relations. You worked extensively on the roadmap for U.S. cooperation on energy and climate change. Based on what is in the roadmap that you helped develop, are you seeing what you want to see from the agreement so far, bilaterally?
I'm seeing a lot of the pieces that we identified would be not only near-term areas for cooperation, but also areas where you already have a great deal of capacity, whether at U.S. academic institutions, at government labs, DOE, EPA, and also in China and similar institutions. So one of the things that we looked at was trying to identify areas that not only would make a difference in reducing emissions and increasing energy security, but then also built on our strengths and built on the demand needs that we have for energy growth, but the power sources that we both have. So I'm very glad to see them moving forward and locking these things in. What I would like to see also is some ability to create a more systematic investment, follow-up, and a way to make sure that these projects and ideas and great programs keep moving forward. We have a long history of cooperation with China since 1979 in clean coal, but we also have a long history of starting deals and then not being able to follow through successive administrations, through lack of funding, through all kinds of sources, and also sometimes the lack of attention and capacity in both sides. So what I would like to see through this lab structure and the working groups and the technology areas for development and deployment they've laid out is also an agenda for how we're going to keep on track, how we're going to keep moving forward throughout the period of these agreements.
Yeah, a global problem as well, no question. Jonathan Adams is with the World Resources Institute, where he is project manager for the China Facts Network. Jonathan, great discussion. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.